Okay, so how to introduce Hugh? It's very difficult because we've been working with Hugh for at least 12 years with this Lapalabrava project, and has given us a lot of good moments, and also good moments together. And I think that for Hugh, poetry is a way of being a friend of all of us. So for me, friendship, is the most important value that Hugh has taught me. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
More than okay.
Okay, I'm doing okay. So Hugh, thank you very much for your friendship, for being with us all those years, and it's really a great pleasure to introduce Hugh Hazelton. Hugh.
Thanks, Flavia. Thanks. So I have 3 poems. The first is called Temples. Fortunate. We walked together through the temples of Khajuraho, lost in the dust of the plains of the Yamuna. The size of the monumental stone pinnacles sculpted with scenes of sexual union in dozens of positions. In combinations, gods or people bending, embracing, coupling elegantly, with apsaras attending, helping them hold their positions, twining around pillars, or simply looking on, combing their hair, glancing into mirrors, smiling or bemused, as the deity couples bonded, converging in Maituna to achieve tantric transcendence, uniting, transmitting, spontaneous cells, fusing, adoring, blending duality into a single being, returning to the act of creation in search of ecstatic catharsis pulsation through pleasure, their faces focused, serenely, joyful, smiling, lovingly joining together to be transported to new worlds, becoming one within the other in the completion of the universe. All from the 10th to 12th centuries. And as we left, you stopped to adjust your sandal, like an apsara removing a thorn from her foot. And that night we felt it possible. And like them, we combined our bodies and beings, making love in those same positions, and feeling closer than ever before, together, alone, in the vast night of India, journeying on until Surya, the sun god, would awake and pick us up once more and carry us off to the coast of Odisha in his 24-wheeled chariot to the temples of Konarak, which had similar statues doing similar things, carved into its sides that were once 60 meters high, and later that one last temple visit to a place of living pilgrimage near Land's End at the tip of Tamil Nadu, the Ramanatha Swami, with a giant seething gopuram rising abruptly above the seashore palms, and his hall of 1,212 massive pillars supporting a vast green and orange ceiling of tigers and mandalas, all leading to the center of activity, the great basalt lingam of Shiva, rising out of Shaktis in folding yoni, where women with flowers in their hair anoint the smooth stone with sacred butter sprinkled with petals that runs down its fluted sides and pools onto the lips of the awaiting circle. And that night we held each other forever, our temples touching. And this poem is called Maeve. It's dedicated to a good friend of mine here in Montreal. Maeve, you suddenly appeared so long ago from Uruguay, via Argentina, Bolivia, Peru, the Andean spine to Colombia, and a breakup in New Jersey, and inexplicably in Montreal, for readings of your clear-eyed, always untitled poems about your interior tempests and the world's injustice with sad, laconic irony in Grito con Espejo, Screen with Mirror, and Apenas un Caballo, Hardly a Horse. Poems like You're My Country, a diffused warmth, pretentious sore, slow asphyxiation of revolvers loaded with words. I throw myself through the telephone's tube, suffocate you with pillows of silence. I face you like a parrot does a train, without a fuss. That were published and translated and praised as being the best kept literary secret in Montreal. And music and parties with people from a dozen countries, and conversations over coffee, and your lively or wistful paintings, and suddenly your breakdown, or crisis, or delusions, or whatever it was that made you lose control. And finally you went off to Caracas to live with your sister Mehedi, who played the flute and piccolo in Venezuelan orchestras, along with her husband on the violin. Where you'd periodically run off and wander into the ranchos in the hills, and they'd have to look for you. Those stories you told me of your mother's instability and your mad but fearless brother who burned through the States and ended up in Hawaii, where your mother, in her 80s, flew out to meet him, and he rented a sailboat for a week and loaded her onto it in a wheelchair so they could head for California. And the Coast Guard stopped them and found her in the tiny cabin and towed them back. And a decade later, you reappeared in Montreal, and we met you in the park with our daughter, with kids flying kites. And you wouldn't come over to the house because we were too happy. And you lived in small apartments in Côte-de-Neige and said you'd finally calmed your mind just as your body started to give out. As you finished the manuscript of the anguished maelstrom poems of Manuel Madre, and your legs slowly weakened, and you'd come to the readings with a cane, then a walker, and finally you ended up in a wheelchair, in a flat for people with disabilities, and could only go out if someone pushed you down and up the ramp and along the sidewalk. And fewer friends would visit because your cigarette smoke was so thick. And in the winter, we couldn't take you outside at all. But you talk on the phone endlessly with Jeanette when she had cancer and couldn't go out herself. And you taught her Spanish with a Rio de la Plata accent. So she'd say, "Hola, maebe." And then she passed away. And after that, you and I would talk. And one day your hospital called me and said, could I come quickly because the doctor wanted to make further tests on your lungs because there was a cloud on one, and you refused. And when I got there, he said, I'll give you 3 minutes. And I spoke to you about Jeanette and her struggle and acceptance, and you finally said yes. And I went with you every week in adapted transport for your tests. And we got the final results, and they sent you to palliative care, where a kindly woman explained what was to come, and then asked, who's your caregiver here? And the three of us realized it was me. And you called Mehedi in Venezuela, and the doctor wrote a letter of extreme emergency to the embassy there requesting a visa. And 3 days later, Mehedi arrived to care for you, as she did in Caracas. And we talked and joked and recalled things and looked at paintings and sketches Mehedi brought from your apartment. And then things got worse, and they put you in a coma in a plastic tent because the pain was going to be too horrible. And the next day you suddenly came to and looked at me and said, Ugo, as you always did, and cried with your sister. And then they gave you an injection and you died that night. And a few days later, as you wished, Mehedi and I and your friend Luz Vida and 2 social workers who'd looked after you for a decade took your ashes to the footbridge by the old mill in the park on Ile de la Visitation and let your ashes slip away into the Rivière des Prairies as we silently said goodbye. And Mehedi played the flute, and an oriole on a branch above the river suddenly stopped singing. poem is kind of an experiment. It's called Lagos, and it's for Vinicius de Moraes, who wrote his poem A Última Elegia in both Portuguese and English, inspiring me to write this one in the 4 European languages of Africa and the Americas. Lagos, lakes, lacs, lagos, the other water, not lost, na enormidade do mar, comme les continents, but contenidos por la tierra, lakes into which you submerge, comme dans les bras de quelqu'un que tu aimes. Placid, clear, welcoming, bienvenido mi hijo. Lagos, que sal de aguas dulces, frescas, spread like liquid archipelagos across the earth. Des milliers de petits lacs en constellation qui couvrent le Québec, des lacs à la truite. And the Shield Country, camping alone at sunset, como grito extraño do lune. And flocks, same fin de aves, migrantes procurando comer os insetos da floresta boreal. Lakes reflecting the sun's light from space in tiny abstract forms, or deep, huge lagos misteriosos del norte, as frozen as remote as mapas antiguos con tierra incognita. Great Bear Lake, Great Slave Lake, Lake Baikal, the Siberian lakes within the taiga, ou le plus grand lac de tous, the Caspian Sea, de agua salada, un mar dentro de los desiertos de Asia. The holy lakes of continents, el lago Titicaca, où Inti, le Dieu Soleil, created the first couple, Manco Capac and Mama Occhio, who rose from the waters para crear la humanidad. Or phantom lakes, como no interior de Australia, ou le lac Ayr, ou le Catitanda du peuple arabana, which only fills up once in a decade, turns the arid plain to a vast shimmering sheet of water, cheia de végétation luxuosa et verde, avec des oiseaux et des marsupiaux partout, et même des escargots. Or the Dead Sea where nothing lives due to upstream pollution, now not just salt. Et les grands lacs, les phénomènes de l'Afrique et de l'Amérique du Nord, aligned along the endless Rift Valley, 9 countries and dozens of peoples, and the others dug out of the continental glaciers that filled it with their water as they vanished northward. Lake Victoria et le lac Kivu, où j'ai presque été noyé dans les grandes vagues qui faisaient ricocher contre les falaises, et Jean, mon ami congolais, m'a sauvé la vie. Os lagos africanos, sobretudo, com milhares de espécies de peixes, e os lagos norte-americanos, com menos peixes, from pollution and overfishing, but superior, still less touched. And Huron, with the Anishinaabe Manitoulin, the world's largest island in a lake, and that has a lake with an island within it. And Michigan, where I was a fish myself, beneath the looming dunes of my childhood, all miraculously flowing out, one into the other, forming a single gigantic river that swirls up and down and up, et finalement se transforme en fleuve pour couler autour de l'île de Montréal, toucher la mer à Québec, et remplir le golfe du Saint-Laurent. Lakes of hard rock or soft sand bottoms, lakes of the wind ruffling a quiet surface, or of waves 20 feet tall. Lagos siempre secándose como el lago Chad, joining the other desert lake beds of the Sahara. Lagos antigamente cheios de canoas y barcos de pesca, and sailing ships and steamers with the lake boat freighters still running beyond the horizon, but with the ghost of the last sailor, el fantasma del último marinero, crossing the Aral Sea. Thank you.